Welcome back. I'm so excited today to be hosting the Munn Avenue Muse podcast brought to you by the Munn Avenue Press.com. And I have a very special guest this time because if you've listened to the prior episodes, we've talked to authors, but today we have Diana Holquist, who is a ghostwriter. And I know those of you who are involved, both as writers and readers, might be curious as to what ghostwriting is all about. And Diana is one of the best, and I know many. So let me tell you a little bit about Diana, and then we'll have a conversation. Diana spent her formative years as an advertising copywriter in New York City, writing award-winning ads for Pepsi, Doritos, Sony, BMW, and other international brands. After 11 years there, she left the big city to raise a family. She also wrote and published 5 books with Hachette, a children's book with Penguin, Random House, and a parenting memoir. But she missed the collaboration of her advertising days, working closely and intensely with smart people to identify problems and find solutions. Creating business books that get results was the best of both worlds. Smart people and smart books. She loves her job and brings that passion and professionalism to every project. And I know she does because we're working on one together right now. Yes. Her mission is to help all people get their messages out into the world. She's a graduate of Columbia University with a degree in philosophy and lives on the Philadelphia main line with 1 cat, 2 kids, 1 husband, and way too many books. So welcome, Diana. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm totally thrilled to be here.
So tell us a little bit about that background as a copywriter and a writer of 5 books. What was that like?
Yeah, I started out in the business world, which I think gives me a really great foundation for writing business books for people. So I'm very lucky about that. But when I was in my late 20s, we moved from New York City to Ithaca, New York. And this was before the time of remote work. So I had to leave my advertising career behind. And that was where I got into writing books and absolutely loved it. And that's how I sort of got to where I am now.
Yeah, and you wrote a book on parenting. I'm curious about that. Tell us about that particular book.
Yeah, so we lived in upstate New York, which is a real hippy dippy kind of town, and then we moved to Philadelphia, to the main line, which is sort of the suburbs outside of Philadelphia, which is the opposite of a hippy dippy town. And it was very traumatic for my kids. So I just wanted to write a book about that culture clash between, having to change cultures so severely when they were young. So I wrote that book, and it was a really great experience because it was the first book that this was right when self-publishing was becoming a thing. And so that was the first book that I self-published, which was a really fantastic journey.
I bet. And I guess they survived, right? They
yes,
they grew up there. Everything turned out okay.
Yes, everything turned out okay. And now they're back in New York City. So, so that's really nice for them.
Yeah, it's funny. My kids grew up where I am here in sort of semi-rural New Jersey. And they loved it. I mean, we're out in the woods. But it seems like their generation went back to the city. I mean, they are, they live in California. Both of them live in the city. So
yeah. Well, there's still time.
And as my wife likes to say, that's about as far away in the U.S. as they can get from us. So.
Oh, okay. Well, they didn't go to Europe, I guess.
Right. So there's a little sort of mystery about ghostwriting. Because ghostwriters really are behind the scenes, but make things happen. Can you tell us what it's like to be a ghostwriter? What it's like? What your process is like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you're writing a book, it's extraordinarily lonely. When you're an author, you do it all by yourself. You sit in a room, late at night or early in the morning, and you struggle by yourself. And it's a really, really hard process. And I've done it quite a few times, and I loved it doing it. But ghostwriting means that you're bringing another person in on the project. And so that struggle of doing it alone leaves. And that's extraordinarily important. So a lot of people, think a ghostwriter is something mysterious, but really it's like bringing a friend, an expert into the process to work with you. And it's all about collaboration. So all we're really doing is collaborating with the author. So the process, my process is, I've been doing this for a long time, over 20 years. So my process is pretty set and I think works really nicely. What we do is we start with a strategy session always. So this is just a very small project where we're going to set the strategy for your book. We're going to look at the title. We're going to look at the subtitle. We're going to look at the contents. We're going to work all of this out. So we work together in this very limited way to create a document, which is a book plan. And after that process, if we decide that we still like each other and we like to work together and we're a good team, because we're not always, sometimes at that point, I'll refer the person to a different ghostwriter. Your project would be right for so-and-so. But if we do continue to work together, then we'll sign the contract and start writing the book. And the way that works is interviews. So I also call them content calls because that makes people less nervous. So we go through the book chapter by chapter. We start with chapter 1. I ask questions. The person answers. We get into a really far-flung conversation about what the content of that chapter is. Then I go off and I write it. And then I give it to them. The first chapter is extraordinarily important because we have to set the tone. We have to set the style. We have to get everything exactly right. And again, this is where the collaboration comes in. I need the client to tell me, "Ooh, Diana, you did this to that, and you did that to this. And I really liked this, but I didn't like that." And we work that first chapter until it's absolutely perfect. We get everything just right. And then from there, it's off to the races. We just wash, rinse, and repeat. Chapter call, create the content edits. Chapter call, create the content edits. And we do that until the book is done. Then we do an overall big picture line edit to make sure it's just what we want. And then the next step is where people like you come in, the publishing. And I'll help people through the publishing process if they need that. And then step 3, of course, is the marketing, which you also do. I can also help people through the marketing or not, or I can just hand them off to wonderful people like you who will take over the publishing marketing side and my job is done.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we are working on a project together, a business book of sorts, and you stayed involved. The author, I think, trusted you and had such a good relationship with you that she wanted you to stay involved. And I'm more than happy to have all your inputs. In fact, we had a lot of discussion back and forth about the title and the subtitle of the book, which went through many iterations, let's just say that. But we got the wording just right, I think. And everybody's very happy. And that book will be out this month. So
I know it's really exciting.
It's very exciting to see that all come together.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is the collaboration side of things where people often feel like there's this myth that the author is this person who should stand on a pedestal by themselves. And actually, the more people we bring onto the team, the better the work gets because it's the more collaboration. And that's something, I mean, you have a marketing background too that you learn in advertising, that you bring in more people and you get more opinions and you iterate the process. And it's so important. Yeah.
And even when authors are writing books on their own, they still need a team to pull it off. You still
Absolutely.
need editors, and I know probably you on some projects act as an editor to, too, right? For somebody who's written, you'll come in and you'll review the manuscript and give them feedback and help them improve it, right? That's
Oh, absolutely. Right. And we also work as book coaches. So, right, if people have a manuscript and it's not quite there, we'll edit it. If they have parts of a manuscript, but they want to work with someone back and forth, we'll book coach. All of that is so incredibly important. I think it's so important that people think, oh, I wrote the book, I'm done. And it's like,
right.
oh, no, honey, no, you're just getting started.
It's really like maybe half the process.
Yeah, yeah.
When I wrote my first book, well, I really enjoyed the editing part. I find that writing the first draft is the hardest thing because I'm writing fiction, and like even I'm sure with nonfiction, just getting the story down is a challenge. But the polishing and making it better to me is fun. What you're doing is you're taking hopefully a good book and making it great.
Yes,
By
absolutely.
doing all those extra little things and thinking about things like, well, is there a better word for this than
Mhm.
surreptitious?
Yeah.
Things
Right.
like that. So it gets down to that granular level where you might have an 80,000 word book where you're looking at individual words to figure out how to make them better. And then, of course, you're looking at sentences and figuring out how to make them better. So, I mean, we have, more to discuss, but I do want to mention at this point for those with short attention spans that you can reach Diana at workingdraftcreative.com. You can also search for Diana Holquist on LinkedIn. She's very active on LinkedIn, and you can find her there. So we can sort of dispel the notion too. This was before I got involved in writing in the publishing industry. My impression of ghostwriting, and there was a good movie called The Ghostwriter, was that is a thriller.
Yeah.
Was that the author would turn whatever over to the ghostwriter. She would go out and create a whole book, and it was done. And I think what you're getting at, which is really more the case, is it is a collaboration. It is a team. The author needs to stay involved, which kind of goes to my next question about how do you, when you're actually doing a good part of the writing, maintain the author's voice and personality in the writing? How do you do that?
Yeah, so that's absolutely the most important thing that a ghostwriter does, right? We're a ghost, we're invisible. We don't want to put our own selves into the book. And the way you do that is to listen. It's really that simple. You listen for tone, you listen for like people's favorite phrases, you listen for their humor. All of these things come up. I look at their previous writing. What have they written before? What have they put out? Even if it's just social media, how do they present themselves, and, what is their persona? Then I listen to the feedback they give me, because I won't always get it right on the first try. So, if they say, I just had a client who said, Diana, you keep using the word toxic. It was a business book on leadership and toxic workplaces. It was on toxic workplaces. She didn't want the word toxic in the book. So these are the kind of things that if there's a great back and forth, I always tell people, tell me everything. You're never going to hurt my feelings. I come from advertising. I am a rock. You can never say anything that will, I know how the process works. I understand how to take feedback. So that's a really, really huge part of it. And then the other part of it is about educating the client, because a lot of times people don't understand the difference between a spoken voice and a written voice. And there's a really big difference. So sometimes when somebody is speaking, they sound okay, but when you write their words on the page, you lose a lot of the intonation, you lose a lot of, the person's mannerisms and how they do things, and their voice doesn't come through if you're just doing a literal translation. You're taking a transcript and you're putting it onto the page. So there's a lot of education to the client. And one thing the clients will say a lot is when they see their words, their actual words on the page, they're shocked. It's shocking. It's emotionally very moving and upsetting and exhilarating and magical and emotional. So it's very important to sort of prepare authors for that, whether you nail it, even especially when you nail it. It's something that people aren't ready for always. So that's
but it's a good feeling for you, right? To see that it's resonating with the author.
Oh, absolutely right.
It's a personal expression that maybe they hadn't thought of it that way. I mean, it's kind of like looking at yourself in the mirror.
Yes.
Or when you hear a recording of yourself, you don't like your voice or something, but it is kind of a mirror, right? You're putting up a mirror.
Right. We're putting up a mirror, but we're also doing a little Photoshop. We're doing a little
Photoshop, and they're going to comb their hair a little and make it better.
Yeah, right. And get just them to adjust the right angle. So there's a lot of art to it and a lot of craft to it. And it's the most important thing that we do for sure.
Let me ask you this. This is a difficult question, and we don't have to include this in this episode. But I am interested. So I'm going to ask you, you do a lot of hard work. You exert your skill. You get paid for it for sure. Does it bother you when you don't get credit for writing the book?
The absolute opposite. I have people all the time. In fact, I have a client right now who's like, I want your name on the front cover of the book. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. That is not how this works. It's the client's work when it comes to the end. I am so happy. I think because I'm such an introvert, I think most writers are. I think all ghostwriters sort of are. You need to be in the background. If you're not comfortable being in the background, then this is really the wrong job for you. I don't want my book. I don't want my name on it anywhere. Not because I'm upset about it, but just because I work very, very hard to get the client's words onto the page, but ultimately everything there belongs to the client. Right. And it's the client's work. I feel that very strongly.
Well, yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing where the ghostwriter really can't, to be effective, can't afford to have a lot of ego in the process because it's about the author. So, and you're a very giving person. I think that's part of what you need to be, is that you get your satisfaction from doing a really good job, from seeing the author thrilled, and then hopefully working with us, sell a lot of books.
Yes, exactly. And I will say that a very big part of our job is protecting the author. So yes, it's all the author's things, but part of our job is to come in and say, this strikes a certain tone, or, I think we really need, your argument is XYZ, but I think we really need to talk about why, because, if we don't talk about why, the XYZ is not going to come in. And that happens a lot. And it's really, really important that we understand what books should be and how the reader will feel. So we're listening to the author, but we're also always thinking of the reader, because we need to protect the author. I mean, you see this a lot in memoir, where somebody might say something about somebody and you go, do you really want to say that? But you do see it in business books too, where it's really part of our job.
We recently worked on a memoir, and Renata Marino was a guest on an earlier podcast, and she talked about the importance of a legal review.
Yeah, for sure.
So and we're starting on another one now, and she wants to use the same lawyer just to make sure if you're using real names or you're talking about domestic situations or whatever, you need to be a little careful about that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
A totally different question, and I'll tell you why I'm interested in this. But I saw in your bio that you have a degree in philosophy. What was your interest? What was your study of philosophy?
Yeah, I mean,
Who did you
yeah,
like?
who did I like? I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to admit that on a on a podcast. And who I liked when I was 20 maybe is a little different than who I like today. Yeah, I was interested very much in argument and logic. And I think that's something that I really bring to my work. Not so much the content, but does it make sense? Are you making a logical? If you're writing a book on leadership, does everything track? Does it all follow? Or do you say something in chapter 2 that's contradicted in chapter 4? Okay, we have a problem. We have to work that out. So I think my philosophy training was really, really great. Toward that, absolutely. And then the other thing I think when you sort of come from a background of philosophy is I think people pick it up a little bit. So I get hired a lot by philosophers.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I've written a book on helped a writer. It was more a book coaching editing project. The philosophy of dieting, which is extraordinarily interesting. Does the person have free will? Right. That's the most important question of dieting. And no one ever talks about free will. So that was just a lovely,
that's
lovely
very
book.
interesting. Part of my interest in the question is that I have a degree in philosophy in ancient Greek.
Yeah.
And I read Plato in the original Greek, which was,
Wow.
my 20s was really quite thrilling. And I learned a lot about what gets lost in translation. But, and the Greek part was purely serendipitous because I went to the University of Rochester and they had a language requirement in those days. And I didn't want to sit in a language lab learning French and, or Spanish. So I wandered into an ancient Greek class. There was maybe 5 students there. And the professor said, if 5-year-old Greeks can learn ancient Greek, you can too. And he hooked me.
Yeah.
And I loved
wonderful.
it.
Yeah.
And now, that there's a lot of talk about, well, hey, the humanities are not very practical. You should go get a business degree or engineering, and that's all fine if that's your interest. But I found that, to me, the benefit of a philosophy degree was to being able to see both sides of a question, right?
Yeah.
So, and we, particularly in this political climate, we're so siloed. But if you study philosophy, there's a lot of argument and back and forth and discussing, oh, well, maybe it's this and maybe it's that. And, it was been tremendously helpful in my business career and writing. It infuses my fiction with moral dilemmas and that kind of thing. So I would recommend to young listeners out there that don't, even if you're in business or computer science, take a course in philosophy or psychology or Russian literature. It will broaden your view of the world. And my brother who's a lawyer for 50 years, just started reading the great books 5 years ago, and it's changed his whole perspective on the world.
Absolutely. I wrote a book for a guy who was a big hedge fund guy, is still a big hedge fund guy, but he had a really extraordinary event happen in his life, and it awoke him to philosophy, and he started studying philosophy, and he became a philosophy professor.
Really? Isn't that interesting?
And he wrote the book for graduates of business schools to say, hey guys, you're about to make a lot of money. Let's let's talk about what that means. And let's talk about philosophy. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's really great to have that kind of background, because then you can bring it into the books. You can bring it into anything. It doesn't matter what you're writing about. You can bring in the philosophy, because it really is logic, and it's listening, and it's argumentation.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So what's next for you? What are you kinds of things? I know you can't tell us specifics. That's the ghost in ghostwriting.
Right.
But what kinds of things are you working on now?
Yeah. Well, right now, what everybody seems to be working on is AI. So I'm reading a lot about that. I'm writing a lot about that for my clients, really deep in that. When you talk about philosophy, wow, there is a lot of, it's not just a tool. It's a tool that there's a lot of ethics behind it. There's a lot of issues behind it. So yeah, a lot of big AI books, which are really interesting. And then, and I think this is extraordinarily important as I'm working on this AI, is what AI is doing to the writing business. And I'm really, really deep into that. Again, it's back to the philosophy. There's a lot of really great philosophers who are working on these questions. We're already seeing writers of blog posts, writers of more short form work are losing their work. They're losing their jobs. And it's you can see the ripple effects and how that's going to affect books coming up, I think is really extraordinary. And I'm not anti-AI. I'm what I call AI curious and AI positive. I think it's bringing some really, really amazing technologies to writers. And I think a lot of writers are backing away from it and, clutching their pearls and saying, oh, this is terrible. This is the worst thing to ever happen to writing. I come at it from a really different perspective. I think it's an amazing tool that can help us a lot. And so I'm very involved in that. I'm very interested in that. I'm actually starting a little company with a friend of mine, looking into one of the huge problems with ghostwriting is it's so expensive. So I'm turning away clients all the time because they can't afford me. But when you put an experienced writer together with AI, it's a different product. It's not what we're doing in ghostwriting, where we're working really intensely one-on-one with a person. But there's a lot there, which is, I think, I'm going to use the word, and I really mean it, magical. So I think we can get more books to more people. And so we're working on that. And I always say to people, if you can't write a book without AI, you can't write a book with AI. But I do think that the writers who don't use AI are going to be left behind.
Yeah, they're going to miss out.
The tools are amazing. Yeah,
I totally agree. And I'm kind of a nerdy guy, so I've been on this for a year and a half or 2 years when ChatGPT first burst onto the scene. And it's a great tool. But I don't think it replaces the writer. It augments the writer.
Yes.
It maybe shortens some of the repetitive tasks. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful for brainstorming titles and even ideas, but it hits its limits, I found, when it comes to certain creativity. It's kind of two-dimensional. So it is pretty great for writing certain kinds of blog posts and ad copy. But when you get to, at least I found in writing fiction, things like subtext and, a little bit of the more nuanced aspects, it doesn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ironic in a way right now that we publish books on Amazon and Ingram, and they both ask when you're submitting the book, did you use AI in the creation of this book?
Yeah.
Well, our cover designer is brilliantly creative, but she's using a little AI to change this or change that.
Yeah.
the author may have used AI to help him or her with an outline or something.
Yeah.
So I think that question is going to disappear.
Yeah. How do you answer it now?
Because AI is going to be in everything. So why ask the question? We'll specify, this is how we used it. And I think really at the moment, Amazon and Ingram just are in a way taking a survey. I don't think it affects.
Oh, that's very interesting.
How they they're not going to not publish a book. In fact, a lot of controversy now, and you'll read articles about people creating whole books in 24 hours using AI. Yes. But at least it seems like when I read AI articles, and I read a lot every day, you can tell whether there's a human voice there or whether it's just like spilling out.
I think that's I think that's absolutely true. And that's why what we're advocating for is sort of a writer-led AI assisted process, which I think is probably going to be the process of the future. So like you say, AI is maybe not quite there yet. There's still a lot of things that AI can't do. But, when we started thinking about this, they were saying this was back when, ChatGPT 3 was coming out, right? These original things, it was at the level of a high schooler, and then it was the level of college kid, and now it's at the level of a graduate student. It's just getting better and better. It's getting better and better faster. So I think the magic comes with that interaction between AI and the author and the human, and we won't use it without disclosing it to the client. Some clients don't want us to use it at all. Some books are way too complicated for AI. Most books that I work on are actually way too complicated for AI. There's too much research. It's very bad at research. And there's too many voices coming in, and there's too much
and there could be inaccuracies
analysis.
If you're doing that kind of nonfiction research.
Right. Yes, you have to be very careful.
But it's getting better, and I don't think we can stick our heads in the sand about this and just say, we won't use it. I think that would be a mistake. I actually teaching in July, late July. I seem to be on the library circuit, so I teach like an introductory course to AI virtually. Oh. Yeah, I'll send you a link. You'll have to
send me a link. Fantastic.
And I'll send links to the readers out there. We have some really good discussions. People are very interested.
Yeah.
But I read an article this morning that I found remarkable, that they took a survey of something like 1,200 young people in their 20s, and only 4% of them were regularly using AI.
Yeah.
There's 20 something percent have tried it or used it once or twice. But I think for younger career oriented people, getting on this earlier and having skills, because I think there's a notion that, okay, I'm going to push a button and AI is going to drop a book out.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of skill in prompting AI to give you the results you want, and iterating the prompts to refine what you want. And my prognostication is, in college, first they banned AI, right? Now they're sort of trying to figure out what to do with it. But I think in the next few years, you will see courses in prompt engineering, and then you will have AI departments maybe 10 years down the road. I saw this evolution with computer science.
Right.
Because when I went to the University of Rochester, there was no computer science department. Computers were just kind of happening. By the time I left, there was a computer science department. There will be an AI department. So what they prohibit now or grudgingly accept will become mainstream just like the word processor did, just like the internet has. And there was resistance along the way with all of these breakthroughs.
Right, absolutely. I think what happens is the people who come in early, they overpromise. So all of these really software companies come in and they're like, you can write 10 books a month for $99 with our program, or you can, we can write these great books for you with our program. And they really can't. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of that attitude toward the writing, where what you need is software, isn't really the direction. What you need, like you say, is to learn to really use AI.
Yeah, and I think that also overlooks, like, if there are a lot of AI written books on Amazon right now.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Yeah,
but presenting the book, that is, having a great cover, great interior, and marketing the book, being able to sell books.
Yes.
Because 90% of the books on Amazon right now are in what I call the Amazon graveyard. There are no sales on those books.
Yes.
But the books that sell are the ones that have a compelling story and or use tools like we do to promote and market the book every day. So, yeah.
Right. It's right.
There's no get rich quick scheme here to be had. All right. I didn't mean to belabor that, but
no, but you're absolutely right.
So, do you have time to read, Diana?
To read?
Yeah, for fun. Do you read? What are you reading if you are?
Oh, like on my own reading. Yes, yeah. I read constantly. I'm I read in a lot of different ways. So I'm an Audible fanatic. I always have at least one Audible book going for when I exercise and when I walk. And right now I'm listening to Excellent Women, which is a old like comedy of manners, which is, I just love that kind of reading. It's very light reading. I love all kinds of fiction. So I shouldn't say that I don't love all kinds of fiction. I don't love fantasy, but other than that, I love most kinds of fiction. So I'm reading constantly, like, I guess what you would call literary fiction. And then I'm a huge nonfiction reader. So I am reading right now. I don't want to keep going back to AI, but I'm so fascinated by it. So I'm just reading everything that's out. Some of it's for the projects I do. One of my favorite things about ghostwriting is that clients say to me, I say to them, what books do you love? And they tell me, so I read those books so that I know what they love, or clients, all the time. Or clients will say to me, oh, it's like so-and-so. And I'll be like, oh, I don't know who that is. And then they tell me, and then that will send me down a rabbit hole reading those books. And then so that I can incorporate quotes from those books and ideas from those books into the book that we're writing. And that can be a really great eye-opening process. And then since I'm writing so many books on AI, I'm reading a lot about AI. Sure.
That makes sense. And it's interesting you mentioned audiobooks, because I'm a big fan of audiobooks too. Yeah. And it probably is because for 20 years I had a long commute to work. So I listened to audiobooks back when there was books on tape.
Right.
Put the cassettes in and listen to the book. And now, of course, and I met the founder of Audible some years ago, which started in Wayne, New Jersey. And there wasn't a device to download books on at that point. So Audible partnered initially with a device called Rio, which was a predecessor to the iPod, as a device to play it back. And then once we had the iPod, well, then Audible had a platform, and then, of course, the iPhone, and now it's ubiquitous. So I'm often listening on my Amazon Echo device. And in fact, you can even say to your Echo device, and if I say this, mine is going to play in the background, but I'll say it anyway, is Alexa, play the last episode of the Munn Avenue Muse podcast, and it will play it. It's now the fastest growing segment of books.
Yeah.
That is, it's growing about 20% a year, whereas print and digital are growing about 3 to 5%. And when I wrote my first book, I said, no matter what, I don't care if I don't even sell it, we're having an audio book. So I have, for my thriller series, I have all audio books professionally narrated. And now there's going to be the advent of virtual narrators.
Yes,
I'm in a beta test group for Amazon. I have one book that's a book of short stories, and I'm testing out the virtual narrator.
Oh.
And she's pretty darn good. I mean, as long as the listener is engaged and the voice is pleasant and not choppy, and I think it's going to work. And that's not to demean the talent of voice narrators, because one of the reasons I don't narrate my own books, if I wrote nonfiction, I would.
Yeah.
But I have 28 characters in my book. So Daniel Greenberg, who I hired to narrate my books, can do the voices of men and women and young and old.
Yes.
Right now, Amazon's virtual AI voice experiment is with one voice. And you can pick men or women, British accent or American accent. And the next development is you can change voices by chapter. And I've been in touch with them, and I said, if you can change the voice by sentence, then maybe it would work for fiction. We'll see. But
interesting. Do you offer that service to people when you publish someone's book?
We do audio. We're producing audiobooks right now for a number of authors. When I get off of this call, I'm having a discussion with a new author. We just published his print book a month ago. We're talking about audiobooks.
That's great.
In his case, it's historical fiction. So we're looking at we're going to audition professional narrators, which we do. So with wonderful. My first book, I auditioned 10 narrators.
Wow.
I shared the samples. I had them read a sample of the book, and then I shared that with a small group of people I trusted for feedback, and we all landed up voting for Daniel Greenberg, who's done a great job for me. And a couple of my other authors really liked him too, so he narrated their books. And we have a female narrator who narrated a book of nonfiction written by Anat Rappaport called Women Up. She's Israeli, and she wanted to have an American voice. She has an Israeli accent. So Emily Wilson did a fabulous job narrating that book. So it's a very, the audiobook world is so fascinating to me. And Audible's doing really interesting things like concerts where the performer narrates in the background how he did this and how he came up with this music, and then they play the music, and there's a lot of creative stuff being done there. We try at Munn Avenue Press to keep up with it, and if we really understand it, like we do audiobooks, we'll offer that as a service in addition to publishing and marketing books.
Yeah, it's a huge service.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think some people go at it alone. I have a lot of clients who say to me, like, oh, now I have the book, I have the manuscript, I can do the rest myself. I can find someone to do the cover. I can find someone to do the interior. And they don't really realize that there's 100 other things that need to be done. And besides the marketing now, there's also this issue of the audiobooks, and it's a lot for people to do on their own. Of course, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want our books, and this has been kind of a mantra for me, our books should look, feel, and read as well or better than the books published by the big publishers.
Yes, right.
So
absolutely.
You don't want to create a book that looks like it was homemade, right. And that's a problem that people run into. And a friend of mine wrote a very compelling mystery book and just ran into all kinds of problems and came to us and said, Charlie, can you help me fix it? And it's not like that's what I want to do every day. But she was a friend and I helped her and we got everything straightened out. She had duplicate copies of the book on Amazon and the cover was not as good as it could be. And we just, and then she finally said, "Oh, I wish I had come to you in the beginning."
Well, that's something I try to tell my clients all the time. And it's really hard to educate on that do it right the first time, because once your book is out on Amazon, you cannot pull it back. Not really. It's always really out there, and there's nothing you can do about it. And a lot of people will also say, "Well, I'll try putting it on Amazon, and then I'll try to get a traditional publisher," and you're just like, "Oh no, this isn't how this works." The people need to be educated that they need to do it right the first time.
Sure,
it's a big conversation.
So, well, great. This has been so wonderful, Diana. I really appreciate you sharing some of what goes on behind the scenes with ghostwriting. And, again, if somebody is interested in your help, they can reach you at workingdraftcreative.com or search Diana Holquist on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
And we at Munn Avenue Press, MUNN avenuepress.com, can help you with all the publishing aspects. Once Diana is finished, we start with proofreading and we design covers and interiors. We publish on Amazon and Ingram, which gets you everywhere that Amazon isn't, like independent bookstores, libraries, Barnes and Noble, places like that. And I'm happy to consult and help educate people on doing it the right way.
Excellent. Well, it's been so great talking to you. It's really been absolutely so much fun, as fun as it is working with you. So,
same here. Thank you again.
Okay.